Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're seeing this. I hope you're having a great day. And welcome to my Mad Lab. I am the Mad Lad. These are my Mad Lad creations. And if you would like to see the personal deck list for yourself, look down in the description below. I know it's been a little bit since I've uploaded a deck tag, but in the same sense, I've had this deck made for a while, and I actually ended up posting it on my Spicy Commander selection video and link down into the description. But if you want to see the actual Precon Rumble, nope, I remember it. I have it flipped. Go look up in that corner over there to go check it out. And this has personally become one of my personal favorite decks to just pull out in general. With it, for those that don't know, Kalamax is a 4-mana teamer commander. Whenever I cast my first instant spell each turn, keyword each turn, if Kalamax is tapped, copy it. I may choose new targets for the copy. Whenever I copy an instant spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it. That's the second important part, because one of the things I ended up doing with this deck is I tried having as many of the spells fall into one of two categories. One of which is being able to be put onto Isochron Scepter. Spoiler, it's in the deck. Second of which draws us a card, because I like to churn through my deck as much as possible. For it, let's just go ahead and get right to this. Academic Dispute, which is target creature may blocks this turn if able. It may gain reach this turn, but it allows us to loot. Aggressive Urge pumps us up, draws us a card. Archmage Ametarius is Magecraft. Cast or copy an instant or sorcery, draw a card. Curate, Surveil 2, draw a card. Desperate Ravings, draw 2 cards, discard at random. Glade Muse, whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, that player draws a card. Typically, we're going to be doing this more than our opponent. Growth Spiral, draw a card, put a land onto the battlefield from hand. Hunter's Insight draws us a bunch of cards whenever we deal combat damage. Lunar Mystic, whenever we cast an instant spell, pay 1, draw a card. Monumentous Fall, sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power, then gain life equal to its toughness, which I have gained over 100 life before. I may have killed myself, but it was funny. Opt, scry 1, draw a card. Poison Blade gives us a keyword and Death Touch, draw a card. Pop Quiz is a 3-mana, basically draw 2, discard 1. And same thing with Practical Research, draw 4 cards, then discard 2 unless I discard an instant or sorcery. With it, for all of these different decks, you have to keep in mind that I believe all of them, let me double check this real quick. Yeah, each of these have the ability to, well, excluding Glade Muse and Lunar Mystic, will all get copied on different opponents' turns, giving us an additional trigger and giving us more cards. The cards that generate us mana in this deck are Arcane Signet, 2 mana, any color. Commander Sphere, 3 mana, any, and draws us card. Crop Rotation, which thins out our deck, which is in this deck is a sacrifice, 1 mana, sacrifice a land, go search 2 basic lands, put them on the battlefield. Not tapped, by the way. Grand Warlord Rada, whenever attack with 1 or more creatures, add that much mana. We're not really a go wide, but the additional mana is nice. Haro, kind of like Crop Rotation, is the exact same thing, but sacrifice, put 2 onto the battlefield, and they are not tapped. Manamorph, add 2 mana of any color, add 4 with Kalamax, and draw 2 cards, or draw 1 if you already used 1 for the turn. This one puts them onto the battlefield tapped. Whenever I attack, add double red, which is beneficial whether we use it for colorless or colored mana. Solemn Simulacrum from the Precon, it searches a basic land and is fodder later along. Magecraft gives us a treasure token. We have 1 mana reducer in Rowan Scholar of Sparks. I decided this was the better one of the two because we have the ability to copy instants and sorceries in contrast to the other side. So with Kalamax getting so big, the one thing I ended up having partial difficulty with was how the hell do I get Kalamax through? There's a few different ways depending on the deck. Trample, flying, or some form of unblockable, which all of these next cards do, excluding 1, but that's for a different reason, so let's just go ahead and get right into this. Chaos Tormentor Lord gives Kalamax double strike. Charge through gives us trample and draws us a card. +10/+10 Trample, and Annihilator too. Enthusiastic study. If we do this after declaration of attack with Kalamax, this basically reads as +6/+2 and gains trample and draw 2 cards, discard 2. Hunter's Prowess is literally the only sorcery we have in the deck, but gains trample and allows us to draw cards equal to how much damage we did. Shadow Rift gives, well, Shadow, which is unblockable except by creatures with Shadow, which has fallen out over the years. Tybor and Lumia give Flying, which is the main important part, and Tuskguard Captain gives us Trample for creatures that have +1/+1 counters. Since there's so much +1/+1 counter synergy in this deck, we also do run Hardened Scales, which doubles the amount we put on, Hydra's Growth, which also does the exact same thing, but on our upkeep, which literally doubles instead of putting an additional one, but y'all know what I mean. Primal Empathy basically says draw a card because Kalamax is typically going to be the biggest creature of them all. Primal Vigor because I love doubling +1/+1 counters. Shaman of Great Hunt, whenever a creature deals combat damage, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card for each creature with power 4 or greater. Simic Ascendancy is a win con in this deck, plus we're able to very easily put over the 20 growth counters. Strength of Tanjaru allows us to put +1/+1 counters on target creature. First Tyrannic War. First level doesn't matter, but the second and third level of the saga do because it doubles. Ozolith because people are going to want to remove Kalamax. 4 of the Whole Clade, which doubles counters. And Ward the Rage Spire gives us an additional ability to copy an additional spell, which this should actually be right down here in the copy section. With it, I'm just going to go ahead and move down here. Isochron Scepter, like I told you all at the beginning, gives us a copy. So does Gentataxius. Lithoform, Pyromancer's Goggles, whenever it's a red instant or sorcery, we copy it. Riku can also copy stuff. Sakashima, because who doesn't love an additional Kalamax? Thousand Year Storm, because it's an additional copy giving us an additional +1/+1 counter on it. I really could have combined these two, but for some reason I didn't. Artifact Mutation gets rid of problematic cards. Chaos Warp, same thing. Evolutionary Charm. This is the most toolbox-esque from this section. Get lands or give Kalamax Flying. And Peek lets us look at our opponent's hand. Who doesn't love information? If Kalamax is tapped, we get to see 2 opponents' hands, see who's the threat assessment. Last few ones I have in this deck, Curious Herd, which lets us go a little wider depending on how artifact-centric players are. Druid's Deliverance because it's a fog. Eon's Frolicker is one of the few cards that I actually ended up keeping from the Precon, but it was such an overperformer that I was like, okay, this is a little more of a memory-esque thing for me. It ain't the best card, but in the situation it is very good. Lightning Greaves gives us Haste and Shroud. Even though we can't be the target, we can still move stuff around, move it around as needed. Rada is kind of like a one-trick pony because this deck has a tendency to be big mana. It can definitely knock some people out and by surprise. Our last value piece is, or not value piece, but the last one-off piece is Seaboard Muse during your opponent or your end step. Well, it's not Seaboard Muse, but close enough, so that we can play on each opponent's turns. Last 3 cards I have in the deck, I couldn't really place anywhere else. Dika lets us go a little bit wider. Melik is at Paragon, lets us copy stuff from the top of the deck. And Talran, whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, we also get to go wide.